Okay, so we are actually live. So you got to smile. And I got to turn the birds off. Um, you see the birds on top of me?
This is
And
what we do when we're
that's
live.
because this whole HIPAA and marketing thing is making me really dizzy. So I'm going to see if Kristen can clear that up. So today we're going to talk about if marketing can increase the chance of a HIPAA audit. Now, Kristen and I, we discuss often what does a HIPAA audit mean? Because the government has actually, if you go to the website, they have published exactly what they do. There's a document that has 254 pages of procedures of what's going on. And so what we thought is we just, you know your life, right?
Yeah, I'm saying government regulations.
Yeah. Well, but
What do you guys think of that,
we as
Joe?
we as marketers, we have to follow them, right? And the problem is often, or is what we see, that the awareness that a marketing company has to follow HIPAA regulations is actually not there. So what we're trying to do is create this awareness. And that's why we have this education series right now. And actually, Kristen, I think you need to lower your camera a little bit so I can see the top of your head too. Yeah, yeah, okay. So, then, no, don't go hiding.
I'm sorry.
We're serious, okay?
Put on my serious face.
We're talking to professionals. And so what I think what we should do is just jump into the presentation. We gave ourselves about 20 minutes today to see if we can get this across. So the question is, can marketing increase the chance of a HIPAA audit? So let me go into the presentation, and then we can just talk a little bit about that. Now, we are also visible right now at the bottom corner, so you can poke your nose while we're going through this. Now, don't laugh. Okay, so the question is can good marketing increase the chance of a HIPAA audit? Now, the question then becomes, what is good marketing? Now, good marketing is marketing that gets you patients on a consistent basis. It ensures a steady flow of prospects. It reduces no-shows, increases conversions of consultations to patients, and solicits referrals predictably, right? It also increases your reputation. And yet we have the master of old marketing say, Dan Kennedy actually, if you haven't offended someone by noon each day, then you aren't marketing hard enough. Well, marketing is supposed to offend, but not offend the offend way. It basically means that it interrupts people and it gets attention. However, if you are successful with your marketing, and we have talked about, can your marketing get you in trouble? Because, it seems like the marketing isn't compliant that's out there. In a future presentation, we're also going to talk about how the audit process works. But, can a patient or anyone, can they turn you in? Now, if a patient feels their privacy rights was violated, they may file a complaint. Kristen, what do you say about that?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And not just a patient, but I mean, it could be a disgruntled employee for that matter. Unfortunately, it could be a competitor who files the complaint. Anyone can file a complaint. It's not hard to do. It's like 5 simple
Yeah.
steps.
So it's a competitor, but one thing that we want to emphasize again, and that's why marketing guys say they don't have to follow HIPAA, is web leads are people that have privacy rights, right?
Yeah.
So somebody that just comes in through the website, that's considered PHI, so they do have privacy rights. Now, a competitor can
Absolutely. What
file.
we've talked about previously.
Yeah, we talked about that previously, but there's this misconception, and we hear this right and left. You see our scared marketer here, or is he scared? How does he look? He says, "Well, am I liable for fines?" Now, the question is really if anyone believes if you violate HIPAA rules, then they can file a complaint. There is also whistleblower laws that are there, so somebody could actually make money off filing a complaint. And when a
That's true.
complaint gets filed, the government is required to investigate, right?
Yeah, they have to follow the trail.
And if they follow that trail and you prove that you are, if you don't prove you have a culture of compliance, the joke can be on you. And
Absolutely.
and the question here is you're not presumed innocent until proven guilty. This is the other way around, right?
Yes.
So unless you can prove that you have a culture of compliance, you're on the hook.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Now, again, in the future presentation, we're going to talk about exactly how this works, but what are the chances that a complaint leads to an audit? Now, the investigators have many complaints. You know, there is a statistics out there that they have like 15,000 complaints. Now, how can they make a decision on which one they're going to pursue? You know, do you think they will look at your marketing?
Well, I mean, it makes sense. Like we've talked about before, the government has already said that they're planning to come out with social media guidance related to HIPAA. So that they're starting to look at social media just in general, because how else are they going to come up with guidance on it? So they're paying close attention now to what's happening out there. And you can kind of picture the investigator with the pile of paperwork on their desk, so to speak, that says like, here's all the complaints that you have to get through today. And their job is to identify whether those complaints even meet the criteria, right? First and foremost, do they meet the criteria of a HIPAA violation? Or something that I should be investigating, or do they disqualify themselves in some way? And there's some really quick ways to figure out whether those things are going to be qualified or disqualified. And one obvious thing in my mind is you go to their website, you look at their Facebook page. I'm sure there's all kinds of things they look at, but if you can't even be compliant online, then sure as heck you probably have some dirt underneath the carpet as well.
Yeah, and we promoted the first live a little bit, and we had a plastic surgery practice actually saying, this doesn't pertain to us, we're perfectly compliant. And so I went out and I looked at their website, and then within 5 minutes I had found 4 violations. So, and that's
Right.
when you think about what somebody does that has to decide which is the one that we're going to go after, that's what they're going to do. They're not just going to see, well, let's see what's in that complaint. They're trying to go deep and find out what's going on. And the issue really is that 70% of practices, if you look at the statistics, fail HIPAA and meaningful use audits. And so the investigator doesn't just want to go after something that's just going to be causing him work. He wants to go after something that's obvious, an obvious violation. So the likelihood of somebody looking is pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, the likelihood is good. And here's the other thing that I hear from marketers a lot is that they feel like the government's not going to come after the marketer, so why should they worry? And, what they don't understand is that in the process of doing this initial review of those complaints, which may very well not be against the marketer, it could be against the client, right? The covered entity,
Yeah.
the doctor. The complaint comes in, and as part of that initial review, they do something called a desk audit. And that desk audit requires the person who's being audited, in this case would be the doctor's office, right? It requires them to write a list of all of the business associates that they work with, all of them.
Well, that's one of the, well, if you look at the 254 pages and you just go search for business associate, that's the first thing they ask for is, where's your business associate agreements?
It is. It's one of the root, problems that they're going to dig into.
Yeah.
And so, even if you're not directly implicated, you will be implicated because as a marketer, you're going to be on that list. You are one of the business associates to that client. So don't think, that you're somehow immune to it or that you're not going to be implicated in some way. It's going to happen.
And the reason for this is because the law changed, right? There's a lot of practices still are before 2013 in their knowledge, and the enforcement has significantly changed, right?
Significantly in September. So it's only been about 5 years. The business associates are now equally liable and the government holds them equally accountable. So before September of 2013, maybe this wouldn't have been a huge topic of discussion for us, but it is definitely front and center now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how does an audit happen? There is this misconception that the audit only happens to the big places, but there is this thing now called phase two random audits. And so what do they do there? It's basically a random audit, right? So it's the luck of the draw.
Yeah. So basically the government is going to pick, their top things that they want to audit for that particular year. And, it could be anything that they're looking for some specific things. It's an enforcement, process, right? So the whole goal is to enforce certain things. So they're going to pick what those things are, and then they're going to send out, some paperwork that all of the covered entities and business associates need to, fill out and send back. And whether they do or don't doesn't matter, because you're still in the pile.
Mhm.
And then they don't just pick like big, organizations. They actually, what they want is a smattering all across the board. They're looking for different sizes, different complexities, different industries, all of the different things that give them a good sampling, if you will. And so that's how they select the people that are going to be audited. It's
Yeah.
not a let's go back off, let's go after the top brass kind of a thing. It's we want a broad sampling so that we can do an official audit.
I saw some statistics where in the first 14 years of HIPAA, they had like 15, $16 million of fines in the entire 14 years, and they have had like $100 million in fines in just the past 4 years.
Yeah. Well, here's a little, juicy tidbit people may not be aware of is that in the 2018 budget overview for the Office for Civil Rights, they got their budget cut severely for the year 2018. And you can go find this online. It's not secret, but right in the budget overview, they say, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have it right in front of me, but they basically say that one of the ways that they're going to adjust to the budget cuts is by increased and more aggressive activities around HIPAA investigations.
And so they basically have to pay for their staff by doing the audits
they're going to get money.
Yeah.
They're
And
going to get the
and there was just an announcement of a $16 million fine for Blue Cross and Anthem, right?
Anthem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That affected about 1 in 4 Americans. So that was a huge consumer privacy aha moment, I think, for a lot of people in the United States who are now getting letters and notifications and monitoring their credit and all of the stuff that goes with it.
See, and that was a breach, right? And that's one my next point I have here. You can get audited because you report a breach. And what's a breach?
Yeah, so a breach is an unintended. I don't have the words right in my head right now, but basically, so there's impermissible disclosure. Somebody saw something they shouldn't have, but then you can take it further into the realm of a breach, where you've maybe lost a client list, or you left your laptop somewhere, or somebody got a hold of it, or some malware got on your system, or there was a hacker of some sort, or somebody opened up, one of your employees opened up an email that seemed official, clicked on a link. Next thing you know, there's some people who shouldn't be in your system, all in your system. And so those kinds of things happen all the time.
Now, in the last one, I told you the story of my employee, basically having emotional problems and telling her ex-boyfriend that she saw his new girlfriend going to the plastic surgeon. And that lady actually called my doctor and told the doctor. Would that be a breach?
That's absolutely a breach, and that's why the doctor called you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have to say, luckily, this was before all this. It's been 12 years, but it made me realize that as a marketing company, you have to be sure that you help your doctor protect their privacy, meaning I have to have those rules in place for my employees. I have to make sure that my employees understand that these people have privacy rights and that they just can't go out and do this. But, if this would happen today, then I and my doctor would be required to report this to the government, right?
You'd be required to report it to the patient and the government.
And then if there's more than 500,
100, yeah.
you also have to report it to the media, and what that means is your reputation is basically shot.
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely. There's a small coastal town near where I live that has like 5,000 people in it, and there was a little chiropractic clinic there that recently I got a notification that they were the next day a media release was going to come out because they had a breach. So
mm,
for about a couple months a couple months ago they found out that there was some malware in their system, and over 4,000 patients were breached. And so they were not only having to notify all those patients because it was over 500 people,
yeah,
they also had to notify the government, and of course they had to notify the media.
yeah.
And the notification I got was about the media release that was coming out the
Now,
next day.
now, when you hear something like that, you feel sorry for the practice, right? Because
I
the
do. And yeah,
ransomware virus is something that they can't control, but working with if they work with a marketing company, and then that would have happened to the marketing company, and they would
yeah,
lose their reputation because they didn't go and get the right marketer. That's
yeah. Well, and here's the thing, as part of the investigation that's going to happen with them, having reported that breach, they're going to have to list out all of their business associates. And so I have not looked. I'm curious. I probably should go look. I haven't looked to see who's doing the marketing for that chiropractic clinic, if anybody, but they will be on the list.
Yeah, and and this affects the marketer, but it also affects the doctor because it doesn't stop with the fine that the doctor is getting, right? He has
Right.
to inform the patients, he has to pay for privacy protection of the patients, and then,
Mm-hmm.
he also probably has a class action lawsuit that could happen because
Potentially.
there's going to be some patients that are going to say, okay, this is a rich doctor, I'm going to go after the guy. And
Yeah, potentially there. Well, yeah, I mean, different states have different laws, so I can't really speak to that
yeah,
specifically, but there are other things that could happen, and certainly the reputation loss
yeah,
and the financial burden that this is going to put on that clinic is unfortunate, because I'm
yeah,
sure they are serving a lot of patients who are very, very happy
yeah.
with the service that they're getting. And so something as simple as this could turn that upside down for a while for them,
Yeah.
if not for good. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, if you're non-compliant and you have a breach, then it may be something that you say, okay, this is my fault. But what it happens to your business associate? What if it happens to your marketing company? And that's one thing that we talked about before. I have heard in several situations that let's not sign a business associate agreement, so it's on the doctor. Now, I want to say here, marketers, it does not make a difference if you have a business associate agreement or not. The government can still audit you without one, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You actually told me that for the first time today. I'd
Yeah,
never heard that, and I did laugh out loud. I
yeah,
apologize, but that is one of the most ironic things I've ever heard, because the law defines whether you're a business associate, not a piece of paper. The piece of paper defines the agreement between the client and the business associate and how they're going to manage the PHI, but it doesn't define whether you are a business associate. That's already been defined by the law.
So
So,
what if a doctor now says, I have this marketing company, I call them, I ask to get the business associate agreement in place, and they won't sign it? Because for the marketing company, it also means they have to be HIPAA compliant, right? So what
right,
what what
okay.
if they don't sign it?
I'm going to give some very strict advice. If your marketing company is not willing to play on the HIPAA field with you, go get another marketer. I mean, that's the best thing you can
Yeah,
possibly do for yourself. You're a healthcare provider trying to protect your assets, and you do not want to play with people that don't understand the risk that's involved, not just financially, but to your reputation and to the patients that you're serving. And so there's a whole lot of accountability and liability going on here. And you don't want to mess with a marketer who does not understand that and does not support you in that, because they're not serving you at the highest level.
well, and
Go get
and
another.
that's what we said out front. If that marketing company doesn't want to sign a business associate agreement, they probably are also doing stuff that is going to get the doctor in
Want to sign
trouble.
it because they
Yeah,
don't understand what it is or how to actually follow it. So
yeah,
they either need to be educated. I suppose that's another option, is you can take them through some process of
yeah.
education. and then due diligence to make sure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to. But honestly, you need a marketer that's gonna serve you at the highest level, and they need to understand that medical marketing is a much different playing field than all the other marketing that they maybe have done in the past. So they need to be up on their game. They need to understand what the rules of the game are so that you guys can both win at it.
Yeah. And, I have heard initially when this enforcement started, every covered entity or every business associate has to have a privacy officer, right? Somebody that is named, correct?
So covered entities, yes, they have to have privacy and security, and that could be the same person. The business associate has to have a security officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that person is actually personally responsible too, right? They're responsible if something happens
They're the go-to person. Yeah. So when there's a breach that needs to be reported or it was discovered and they need to handle it, that's the go-to person that's going to put all of those pieces into play. Yeah. That's also the person that's going to be named in the investigation as the primary contact.
Yeah. We have actually on our website, and I'm not sure exactly on what page it is, but we can put that on the front page. There's actually a case where it describes that employees, in this case it was physicians, turning in their hospital because of these whistleblower laws. That's 15 to 25% or something gets kicked back to them for the fine that a hospital gets. And 25. So the doctors, the employees turned in the practice for HIPAA violations. Yeah. So the doctors, it's pretty clear you have to have a business agreement in place with your marketing company or business associate agreement, because they store, they create, and they transmit your PHI, and you may have to report that. And if you do it on purpose, if you don't have one, then there is more trouble that could happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's 4 different levels. They call them tiers to the fines that can be assessed to someone when there's an investigation. And the term that I would call what you just described is willful neglect. So basically, anyone who's listening to this now understands that HIPAA applies to what they're doing based on the discussion that we've had so far. And so if you choose not to do anything about that, then you're already at a tier 3 level if something is to happen. And the unfortunate thing about tier 3 is it's 2 unfortunate things. One, it's 100 times the minimum fine for a tier 1. So right there, you've just paid what I would like to call a stupid tax if you've done something like that. If you know you're supposed to do something and you don't actually put your best effort forth to put it into place, that's just stupid tax. So you're tier 3. But the other thing about tier 3 is that once you get past tier 1 and 2, tier 3, those are mandatory fines. If you're at least a tier 1 or 2, the investigator at their discretion can work with you to either waive or reduce those fines. And in many cases, you'll find that they will work with you if you're willing to work with them. Yeah. But if you're in the willful neglect category and you're in a tier 3, they don't even have the option.
And this doesn't only apply to doctors, right? You are educating marketers to become HIPAA compliant. The marketing company could get into that realm as well, right?
Well, like I said, as of September 2013, through something called the Omnibus Rule, which fully took effect in that month, the marketer, who we've already said is a business associate because they're doing lead generation, and we can go into the details on that maybe on another live, but basically they are a business associate and they're equally liable as of that date.
Yeah, and so
it really has nothing to do with who's more liable than the other, because in the eyes of the government, as of September of 2013, they're equally liable.
Yeah. And so when I'm a doctor right now, and I know, I may not have a business associate agreement, and I think it happens often. What you need to do now is go and ask your marketing company to sign a business associate agreement, and you also need to ask them to become HIPAA compliant. And what that means is there is what's called a technical due diligence, right? And so you can't just go, here's a piece of paper, sign that, and we're fine.
Sign the paper, we're good. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You as the covered entity in that situation, you're accountable for making sure that your business associate is actually going to be able to comply.
Yeah,
So.
and essentially, if you have a marketing company, sorry, you need to make sure that they only use compliant tools and practices, right? And that's basically the due diligence that you have to do. You have to make sure that your business associate can follow the rules. And so essentially, if you know it's a 21-year-old kid that just did their first marketing job with you and they're giving you a free 1 week trial, you still need to make sure that they are HIPAA compliant, right? It's not like, okay, this doesn't apply to interns.
Be leery. Yeah, absolutely. There's some questions. So if we're talking to covered entities, I would say there's a set of questions that you should equip yourself with of if I'm going to hire a marketer, what should I be asking this person? It's kind of like a job interview, right? What should I be asking this person or this agency so that I can feel like I've done my technical due diligence to know that they're going to protect my assets by incorporating HIPAA into not only their business but our campaigns.
Yeah, and we've heard this before. If money doesn't change or isn't exchanged, HIPAA doesn't apply. And that's not true.
I hear all kinds of things. I heard one time somebody said, well, it doesn't apply to providers where the patient has a choice, like a chiropractor. They have a choice. They can go see the chiropractor. But it applies to emergency rooms or hospitals, or if they have to go have surgery or something. And I'm like, where in the world are you getting this information? The government has no specificity to the level of the specialty or the service. It has everything to do whether they fall in the category of covered entity. And if you're a doctor, and you're billing for insurance and things like that, you're like, this is you're a covered entity. And so your marketer has to do compliant marketing regardless.
Yeah, and that's, what we're not trying to do is tell practice owners and marketers to quit marketing and building their business. What we're trying to say is there is a way of doing this right, to do it compliant and have a marketing approach that works, correct?
Yeah. Our whole goal is to educate people, to elevate their level of knowledge to a place where they can feel at peace that they're not going to be levied some heavy fines or have to worry about their reputation.
Yeah.
I mean, things happen, bad things happen, but set yourself up for the least amount of risk possible. Do your due diligence.
Yeah, and that's basically what we offer. When you join our group, you can learn what you need to do to make this happen. Now, our group is called HIPAA in Marketing, and there is going to be a link below this video again. Join the group and just find out what you have to do to keep your marketing working and also be compliant. There is going to be different educational sessions that we're going to do. We're going to talk about social media marketing and HIPAA and what's allowed. Kristen, there is regulations that are pending, right? Something is coming out there.
The government announced earlier this year, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of this. It's not like this comes out on the mainstream news, but they are looking to provide guidance on social media as it relates to HIPAA, which I'm looking forward to. That'll be great. But we still have to look at the current rule and how it applies to social media. So that's what we want to equip people with the knowledge on.
Yeah. And then I'm actually going to go into what I do well, what I have done for the past 15 years. We're going to talk about the 5 shifts that make medical marketing work, make it work fantastic, and keeps it compliant. And, this is actually a pretty long one. You got to take at least an hour of your time. When I get to talk about this, I can't stop, so maybe Kristen will stop me at a certain point. But
I don't usually stop them, guys, because he actually has a lot of really, really amazing information. So I think that's going to be a great question. I'm excited because I know I'm going to learn some stuff too.
Well, this thing about what does it mean if marketing works? You got to realize that without marketing, you can't turn your practice into a business. And that's what I always tell my clients is quit practicing, turn this into a business. And the business doesn't mean it's only money. You can serve patients better. You can serve more patients. I would always expect that my clients feel that they are the best choice for their patients. And so marketing isn't something dirty. Marketing actually gets you to serve more of the patients that you want to serve. And that's why I think it's really cool. So another session that we're doing is, this is about no-shows, about follow-ups, about solicitation. In today's world, we're using emails and SMS, and we want to know how HIPAA plays into this and what is allowed. Actually, Kristen, I sent you yesterday that privacy rule of my dentist, and I'm not sure what they do there, but seemingly they are of the opinion that they can just send and not ask, and I can object. That's something that we could discuss, not necessarily here, but it seems like that is the wrong way around. I want to have a choice if they're going to send something or not, but
yeah, we should talk about that during that
yeah,
session.
yeah,
Because email and texting are two very, very different things, and,
yeah.
and there's different parts of the rule that apply to each of them.
But
So
they're unencrypted communication, right? There is it's not like
I'm not being drug into this conversation right now,
yeah.
Joe. It's a big one.
Okay. 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 Now the other thing is we want to talk exactly about how the audit process goes, and we call this too small to get fried, because one of the misconceptions is that the government chooses who they're going to audit.
Yeah, that is so funny. A lot of people will say, "Well, I'm too small. They're not going to come after the little guy." And I just have to look at him and shake my head and say that you're making a huge assumption that the government has some like giant map on the wall that they're throwing darts at, and they're all in there going, "Oh, let's go after this guy." I mean, that's not how it works. That is
Yeah.
not how it works. It's a complaint-driven process, or it's a breach-driven process. So you're basically one complaint away from being investigated. Yeah. You're one breach away from being investigated, and it doesn't even have to be your breach or a complaint against you. It could be a complaint or a breach that has to do with one of your business associates, or if you're the marketer, maybe it's a complaint or a breach that has to do with your medical practice owner, and you're drug into that situation, either direction. Yeah. So it's not a who should we go after kind of a situation. If people understood, they'd realize that it's entirely on what's coming to the government, and that's how that's driven.
Yeah, and there's one that we always hear is, and then this is part of a misconception, is tools don't make you compliant. Your behavior does. But the question we always get is, what tools are compliant? Messenger, bots, Aweber, MailChimp, Constant Contact, some different web hosting things. And the question of what is allowed and how to do this is something that we're going to discuss here. And that's
one of my favorites, actually, because a lot of times one of the first questions people ask me is about which tools they should use.
Yeah.
And my first question back to them is, which ones do you use and how are you using them? Because that's gonna play into the answer. Yeah. It's not a which tool can or can't I use. A lot of it comes down to how you're using it.
Yeah, exactly. It's behavior. Compliance is compliance culture. And part of that, and that's what we're going to harp on, is you need to have a marketing company that doesn't get you in trouble with HIPAA, and a marketing company that understands. And that's one session that we have already done before, and we're going to do it again. And all of this is going to happen in our group. So that's about what our presentation is. Let me switch over, see if I can find it on my 10 screens that I have here.
Joe has a background.
Yeah.
He needs 10 screens.
10 screens, yeah. Lots. I have 4 computers in front of me, yeah. But anyhow, so I hope we've answered the question if marketing can increase the chance of the audit. And if you guys are interested in hearing more about this, join our group. We're going to do this longer. We're going to do this more often, and there is going to be tools in there as well. We're going to have checklists and questionnaires and stuff like that that we're going to provide to our members so they can actually do due diligence with the marketing company. And yeah, that's it for today.
I would just say I would encourage people to join the group, not just to get the information, but also to give us their questions.
Yeah.
I mean, the best way for us to make sure that we're serving you, that we're giving you the information that you need and want, is for you to tell us what that is.
Yeah.
So join the HIPAA and marketing group if you're a practice owner, and put your questions in there. Start communicating with us on what it is that you need or want, and we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to get that information to you.
Okay. Good. So that's it for today, and soon we're going to talk about more interesting stuff.
Yes, more interesting stuff. All right.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye, everybody.